Well, the thing is that sometimes you need a loan and you need an emergency loan, right? It's really important. And the loan is just sitting there, and they tell you, well, the loan is under review. The question is, what do you do, right? So into this conversation, I really want to give you a few pointers as to how to manage the whole emergency loan under review thing. Okay. So here is the pro tips. Here are the pro tips I really want you to pay attention to. It's really important first to understand that when your emergency loan is under review, you got to ask yourself, am I just going to let it just slide? Like, am I going to forget about it and probably apply for other loans? Or I'm just going to wait for them to actually contact me? Because the whole thing here is that, the lender has an entire organization, in-house underwriters who are looking at loans, right? There is no way they have forgotten about your loan. So if they're not getting back to you, maybe there is a problem of a backlog, or they're just trying to, they are checking your data out, okay? It's really important to understand that when we look at emergency loans in general, like if you were to go for another emergency loan, make sure that you try to pre-qualify if possible. Because the whole thing here is that, if you already have a loan that is pending, if you go apply for another loan, if you just let them do a hard pull on you right off the bat, this could be a little bad for your credit score, right? Because you're talking about every time you have a hard pull, you're having what? -10 or -15 in some cases. So we really need to preserve your FICO score here. So when you are looking for other emergency loans, just trying to see if you can pre-qualify. Okay. And what I want to say here is that you always want to ask if the lender can actually approve you based on your profile. In other words, you're trying to really learn more about the requirements for that particular emergency loan. That's like you got to do all those things while you are waiting for the other loan, the other emergency loan that is under review. The whole thing is you can't just sit around and just wait for them for the first loan to get back, for the first lender to get back to you. Okay. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. I really appreciate having you here in today's conversation. And I'm just giving you a few pointers here and trying to really help you manage an emergency loan under review. Okay. One thing I want you to remember also is that if you are trying to look for other emergency loans, make sure that you keep an eye for additional fees. And you also will have to look at the lender's customer support. Very, very important approach that I really want you to think about. So the whole thing here is that if your emergency loan is under review, you have to really ask yourself whether or not, once again, the application process, like if you did everything right during the application process, in other words, have you provided all the data they asked you? And you got to ask yourself whether you were eligible in the first place, because sometimes, the whole thing is, if you are looking for an emergency loan, sometimes we are so busy, we're so like things are really so urgent, we forget about the basic things. Like you apply for an emergency loan. Okay, did you qualify in the first place? Let me give you an example. They are asking for a FICO score minimum of 650, and your ask is probably around 575, or your ask is around 525, but you applied anyway. Or they were asking for income, like annual income of 30 grand minimum, and your income is around 25 or 20, but you applied anyway. See, if you have this sort of deltas, if you have this sort of gaps, this sort of dichotomies in the original application, this is going to delay the whole review thing. Like it's going to make your loan sit there in the queue. Okay. And or sometimes the lender is asking you for, like, you got to provide use of loan proceeds. They're asking you, why do you need the loan? And you just ghost them, or you just probably ignore their email or whatever, or their text message. Sometimes they'll call you. So those things happen a lot. You have a lot of lenders in the country, from Chase to a Bank of America to Truist, even the regional banks, even the credit unions. Because anytime you talk about emergency loans, there is an entire department within the underwriting unit at banks and credit unions, and even alternative lenders. They actually take care of those emergency loans because they really treat those loans as emergencies. Okay, because you're not really going to walk around and just play games and just lie and say, this is an emergency loan, but it ain't really an emergency loan. It's just another loan that you're just applying for, right? Very few people actually will go that far to lie about that. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We're having a conversation about, if your emergency loan is under review, what should you do specifically to actually accelerate, to actually, speed up the process? Okay. Now, here is a review I really want you to pay attention to. So when we talk about emergency loans, you have to understand that there is just another type of loan. The only thing is that they tend to be reviewed quickly. They tend to be actually underwritten quickly. They tend to be actually approved quickly. Of course, if you do qualify. Okay. Now, how do those emergency loans really work? First of all, we need to understand when you say you want an emergency loan, you have several types of emergency loans. Okay. In our research for the last 30 years, we have seen actually 4 primary types of emergency loans that actually that really float around in the industry. Okay. So you have personal loans. So this is what you probably are familiar with. Like you go to your bank, you go to your credit union, or you go to your alternative lender and you ask them, listen, I want an emergency loan because I'm having problems at work, my family, whatever, I just have life happening to me right now. I have a medical emergency and I'm just like, I'm just broke. I'm just broke as hell. Okay. So that's the personal loan. You also have an emergency loan that can be a payday loan. Okay. Payday loans are notoriously expensive. They're very prohibitively expensive. And we would not actually, we do not advise our clients and our viewers to actually, try payday loans unless they have to, because you can always go to your bank, you can always go to your credit union and actually ask for an emergency loan. It's a lot cheaper. Okay. This is why we always say you have to maintain a relationship with your bank so that if something happens, they can actually take care of you real quick. Okay. You also have title loans. Now, title loans are another type of an emergency loan. Okay. So title loans, basically, it's a kind of loan that actually allows you to, like, let's say, to hand over the title to your vehicle, right? Like a car, in exchange for cash. And the thing is that it's kind of dangerous though, because honestly, if you don't repay the loan, guess what? Your lender can keep your vehicle because you already gave them your title. You give them the title to your vehicle, right? And you also have credit card advances. Now, if you have a credit card, you can borrow cash through your available credit balance. Okay, this is also considered an emergency loan. Now, in this case, in some cases, the bank wants to review the cash advance before approving it. Now, let me give you our pick here. So, what can you use an emergency loan for? Okay, because sometimes, again, if your emergency loan is under review, chances are maybe you did not give the bank or a credit union the proper justification for the loan, because the thing is that the banks and credit unions are very, 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 very clear about what emergency loans can be used for. And borrowers who do not follow instructions are less likely to be approved. Okay. So you can actually use an emergency loan for almost anything. But the thing is, you have to articulate the reason. You have to tell the bank or credit union why. Okay. So you can use the cash for medical bills, for example. God forbid something happens to you or to your spouse or to your children or to a family member or to anybody else that you care about. And you just have to, like, they've been to the emergency room, for example, or they have an unexpected medical expense. So this is the kind of situation where you can try to have an emergency loan to sort of take care of that. Okay. Or, stuff happens. You need cash for rent and mortgage payments, for example. Because the whole thing here is that if your home payments due soon and you don't have the cash to pay on time, guess what? You don't want your ass to be on the street, right? So you might want to get an emergency loan to sort of help you out, temporarily. Okay. And also utilities. I mean, you never know. I mean, especially in the winter or in the summer for that matter, where temperatures are like crazy high. It's hot as hell. Or in the winter when it's cold as hell and you don't have money to actually pay for electricity, you don't have cash to pay for water and whatnot, then it becomes a problem. So you can actually get an emergency loan to take care of that. Or funeral expenses. Okay. I mean, you have somebody who passed away, stuff happens. Okay. And the person passed away at quote unquote a very bad time for you, monetarily speaking. So you probably can look for an emergency loan also. Okay. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you again, today's topic, we're talking about what you can do if your emergency loan is under review. What can you really do step by step? Okay. And I'm just trying to contextualize the conversation. That's why I'm just reminding you of the topic. You can use the cash also for home or car repairs. Okay. So the reason why I'm giving you all those reasons is because if your emergency loan is quote unquote stuck under the review process, It's maybe because you haven't given the proper rationale, the proper motive, the proper use of loan proceeds. Let me give you the steps I want you to follow right now when it comes to choosing an emergency loan in the first place, okay? Because if you are trying to prevent this situation from happening again, like from if you don't want to have your emergency loan to always get stuck in the review process or in the underwriting process, make sure that you choose your emergency loan properly. That way, you know that nothing can happen to you. This is very critical, especially if you have a family and you are looking for an emergency loan to take care of what we call existential things, right? Things like paying the bills, paying the utility bills. Those are existential because God forbid in the winter, when the temperature drop like crazy, and if you don't have cash if you don't have cash to take care of your utilities, I mean, only God knows what will happen here, right? I mean, of course, there are programs in the country, and they are backed by the federal government and also the state authorities that actually provide some kind of subsidies for like heating or all those kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to say here is that there are existential threats to you, to your family, if you don't have the proper emergency loan. So when you actually are choosing an emergency loan, make sure you think about the funding time. Okay, you need to actually know whether or not you're getting your cash like in your bank account, like let's say a day or 2 days from now. Like because sometimes lenders will want to actually drag their feet trying to release the funds, and you don't want that, right? You really want to know clearly. Hey, listen, when am I getting my cash? I mean, I have applied. I've given you everything you asked me. Okay, so when am I getting the cash? Just be clear with me, and don't let a lender sort of like razzle dazzle you, telling you, yeah, the cash will be released like within 48 hours, 72 hours, and before you know it, they release it. They release it after 1 week. And the bad thing here is that when we speak about emergency, I mean, you have emergencies and then you have emergencies. Like if you have a real emergency, like 1 week is really too far. Like, so think about the funding time, think about interest rates, think about repayment terms, think about the fees, think about the credit score requirements when choosing an emergency loan. Now, let me actually solidify the conversation here, the discussion here by giving you a decision. How do you actually get an emergency loan real quick? How do you avoid having your emergency loan being stuck under review? How do you make sure that you get an emergency loan that really approves you right away, right off the bat, right? So you're not really stuck, quote unquote. The thing is, when we talk about emergency loans, you really have to try to really get it from an institution with which you already have a relationship. That's the easiest. Like if you're having problems, right? If you're having problems now, you came to me, I'm your friend. Chances are I'll take care of you. I'll hook you up. It will be a lot easier for me to hook you up because we already have that relationship. If you were to go to a stranger when you're having problems, this could be problematic. It's the same thing. If you want to get an emergency loan, it's always good to go to the source first, the bank where you currently are at. Okay, the bank where your family is currently at, you or the credit union. Okay, and so once you do that, you want to check your credit score. I mean, before you actually do it, like before you contact the bank or credit union, you want to check your credit score. By the way, I just want to let you know that you also have other players in this industry that will allow you to get an emergency loan with no problem. I mean, I'm speaking about Avon. Those fintech lenders, like those online lenders, Avon. I'm talking about Upgrade. I'm talking about Upstart. I'm talking about a new you have a lot of those players out there. I'm talking about Newegg, for example. Okay, so you have those players who are who will take care of you. I'm not sure if it's Newegg. Newegg is an online marketplace. Okay, I'm blanking on that point here. But my point here is that you want to check your credit score first. Okay, so once you actually before you contact the bank or credit union, make sure you check your credit score. Okay, trying to look for ways to improve your credit score. I mean, I know an emergency just happened, and an emergency doesn't tell you, hey, listen, I'm here. I'll show up in 3 months. So be ready. No, this is not how things go. But the thing here is that you can always take steps to improve your credit score every single day. You want to determine how much debt you need to consolidate if needed. Okay. And you always want to shop around for the best terms and interest rates. Very important. Okay, let me talk about the decision time here. It's really important for us to be clear about what really matters and what doesn't matter. Okay. And when we talk about, like, if you have bad credit, you can still have an emergency loan. Yes, you can be approved, not a problem. Okay. And the thing here is that if your emergency loan is under review, in other words, is stuck in the pipeline or in the queue, maybe because you have bad credit, maybe because your credit. I think I said that at the beginning of this show that you probably they want to have borrowers who are at 650, and your FICO score is around like it's like subprime, right? So if you have that delta, that gap, that chasm between what they are expecting and what you are providing, this could be problematic. So if you have poor or bad credit, I'm talking about 350 to 579. It can be problematic for you to get an emergency loan with bad credit. Okay, unless you have the relationship, unless you actually you have a strong relationship with a bank or credit union, and you have had this relationship for many years. The thing is, a lot of people believe if I have bad credit and I have a relationship with a credit union or a bank, I could still qualify. Yeah, but there's a caveat here. If your relationship is only 1 year old, I mean, think about it. I mean, imagine you actually were like you have been dating someone for 1 year versus 10 years. You can see there that you over 10 years you have had the opportunity to solidify something, right? You can't just break it. It's harder to break. It's the same thing here. That bond that you have with that woman or man is harder to break because of timing, of the time. Okay. So if you are trying to have an emergency loan with bad credit, make sure that you add a co-signer if possible. Okay. Make sure that you can utilize available collateral if available. And you can also, our preferred option here is to always apply through a credit union because not because they are nice or whatever, but they tend to be more family oriented. They tend to be more member oriented. So, they want to take care of their members. And the cool thing here is that your chances of getting of getting that emergency loan with bad credit are high. Let me close to this conversation by giving you a bonus here, okay? Where can you get an emergency loan, really, like when you really think about it? Because, if your emergency loan is under review with another bank, chances are you got to think about alternatives. And those alternatives, thank God, they do exist, okay? In this market, in this industry, there are really there are alternatives. So you can actually go to a bank. You can go to a credit union. You go to an online lender, as I said before. Okay, so you have this trifecta. You also have the quote unquote what we call alternative lenders, and they can also take care of you. Not a problem. Okay, now let me give you the overview here. So what are those alternatives? What are those? Not the like the emergency loan. If you can get them, you can look for alternatives. So you can try to have, for instance, zero interest credit card. Because if your idea is to get cash for a credit card, if you are lucky enough to have a credit card that doesn't charge you like crazy high fees on cash advances, you are good to go. There are some credit unions in the country that provide that kind of service, but they're very they're not really that many. Okay, so think about home equity loan or HELOC. Okay. Home equity line of credit. Think about family loans. Think about medical repayment plans. Think about nonprofit organizations. Okay, you do have a constellation of sources where you can actually get your emergency loan. It's at cheaper rates. Okay, but my overall thing here is that when we talk about emergency loans, yes, of course, I'm giving you advice on how to get the loan. But my true calling, my true goal, my true desire for this show is for you to actually be in a situation where you are building an emergency fund. You are building a rainy day fund. You are building so you're stashing some cash away in a bank, in a savings account, in a certificate of deposit CD, in an IRA, whatever the whatever the savings option is, at least you are stashing cash away so that if something were to happen to you again, you are not going to actually, scramble around and try to have an emergency loan in the first place. Okay. And by the way, if you have some tax refunds, instead of actually spending that refund, you can start thinking about how to actually park that cash, maybe in a CD, in a certificate of deposit that you can just lock for 1 year or 2 years or whatnot. So that way you have the opportunity. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I was just explaining to you, if your emergency loan is under review, some of the things you can actually do to actually accelerate the process and like the approval process. So I actually talk to you. I give you a few pro tips. I explain to you the approach, the review, the pick, the steps, the decision time, the bonus, and also the overview, so you have a clear idea about how to actually navigate the whole process. Thank you. God bless you. I'll speak to you another time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.